Alright, welcome back to a new TouchDesigner tutorial. And in this one we are going to look at some different methods of motion capturing and how to display that in a fun and abstract way. So I'm going to show you a few different examples of like different inputs and different outputs. So there's going to be two main outputs here, and one of them is going to be a very simple example, which is this one, where we're really just capturing the motion as the outline of the person. And the other one is going to be a bit more fun and abstract and sort of looks like cells or something like that, right? And here we also have the option to turn edge on and off, and yeah, looks pretty spacey. So we're also going to look at some different inputs. So in this case, what you're seeing here right now is just a dancing silhouette. Basically, it's a video like this from the internet. And we're also going to look at a Kinect input, where we're just using the player outline or silhouette. We're also going to look at how we can use a video which is not already a silhouette, and how we can sort of extract just the motion from that. And we're also going to look at how we can overlay that onto the video. So in that case, it looks like this. So using the motion of that video and overlaying that on top of the other video. Technically, there we go. So we have that video of the dancer running in the background, and we have our abstract shapes being overlaid on top of that. Cool. So as usual, we are going to delete everything and then just start from scratch together. All right, so I'm going to delete almost everything. Just going to leave a few notes in here, and those are going to be the videos that I'm using and also the Kinect top. So I'd recommend downloading a video that's very similar to this, but you can also just use the Kinect right away if you want, or you can wait till later on when we're using another video. So I'm just going to add a fit here, and I'm going to change the resolution to 1920 by 1080. I'm going to change the pixel format to 32-bit float. And I'm going to change this to fit outside, just so if we like have another video that's a different resolution or format, then we can put that in here. It's going to be adjusted. So I'm going to go down with the scale just so my dancer is a bit more in the center, and I'm going to add a white background color so we have no alpha in the background. Then I'm going to add a level here. So this white background and everything, what I'm doing here is a very special treatment for this video. So like a special treatment for this very video. It's not that special a treatment, because I want to have a white person on a black background. So I'm just going to invert this. And I'm also going to add a limit here to just get rid of that logo. So I'm just going to quantize this and change it to 1. And now we just have black and white values. I'm also going to add a switch here, because I want to add some other inputs later on. And I'm going to use a transform here. I might need that later on. And I'm going to add a null, because we're going to start some feedback loops from here. All right, so I'm going to start off by showing you a very simple example by just using an edge. So basically we just have the outline of the silhouette now. And I'm going to use a feedback here. In combination with level and compositing, as you probably have seen many times. So I'm just going to change this to maximum and put that back on my feedback, and you can already see this is being drawn onto the screen, like our movement is being drawn onto the screen, which is already pretty cool. The thing here is that it actually doesn't stop drawing on it, so we need to go down with our opacity to like 0.995. It's a good value. And now it fades out. I don't like that fading out effect that much. If you do, that is okay, but I don't. Already seen it too many times. What you can do is you can just add a limit. I'm going to put that up here because we're going to use it in another feedback loop too. And on this limit, what I'm going to do is go to quantize again and change this to round and 1. And now we don't have that fade out effect. Basically, it just stays white and then like turns to 0 opacity right away. So there's no fading, no gradient. And that looks pretty interesting, especially if you use the Kinect. And yeah, Before I look at that Kinect input, let's just add a few more things after this. So I'm going to add a lookup in combination with a ramp. And on my ramp, I'm just going to change this white color to sort of orange color. It looks a bit more funky. And it also makes sense with these kind of things to use an anti-alias with quality set to ultra. Otherwise, it doesn't actually do that much. And I'm going to add a null, call it BG, and display that in the background. Cool. So on my Kinect, right now it's black because I'm not in front of my Kinect, but I'm going to move there in a minute. So I'm going to add a blur here, because it's going to make sense to blur what's coming in from the Kinect. On my blur, I'm going to change this to 32-bit float. And on my blur, I'm also going to change the value to like 12, so a bit higher than default. And I'm going to add a limit too. Because what we're getting here, if I just stand up quickly, kind of hard to see. It's I'm not sure why it is that way, but the silhouette that you're getting out of here is like a very low visibility. It's like sort of dark gray. So what we can do with this limit here, we can change this to ceiling value step 1, and now it's going to be a completely white figure. I'm going to put this into the switch here, switch 1, change my index to 1, and now if I move again in front of the camera and move a bit, you're going to see that. And yeah, that is a lot of fun to play around with. I can guarantee you that. So, and it's super simple, but yeah, because it's always sort of following you, right? It's repeating your movement and stays that way for a while. And you can adjust how long it stays by changing the opacity. So you can sort of, in this case, you can sort of see opacity as the length of the trail. So this value here. Okay. So that is the first very simple example. I'm going to move back to our dancer. It's kind of better to see. And I'm going to just get rid of the display here in the background. I'm going to move all of this stuff much more over here. And now we're going to build another feedback setup that's a bit more interesting than the first one. So I'm going to add a feedback here. And for both of these feedbacks, I want to have a keyboard in, chop, with which I can reset my feedback loops. So I'm just going to use these on both my feedbacks. So now if I press 1, it's going to reset my feedback loop. Cool. So I'm going to add a blur here. And from the blur, I'm going to add a composite. And on my composite, I'm going to change the operation to difference. And basically what this does, it's really just looking for every iteration of the feedback loop. It's just going to look at the different inputs that we have and create an output that sort of displays the difference between these images. So we're going to give this 3 different inputs. So one of them is the blurred version of the original. So on my blur here, I'm going to change this to 32 and my sample step to 0.1 on both axes. And from my blur, I'm going to add a level. And on my level, I'm going to change these values to 0.02 on the black level and on 1.2 on my gamma. And these values are really just the result of experimentation. So it's not like I knew I'm going to use these values. It's just like in the process of making this project, I noticed that these values work well. So now I'm going to just leave that here for a second. And from here, by middle mouse clicking, I'm going to add another level. So we're going to use the original image now, because if we put this into here, I'm just going to show you, and put this back onto the feedback, actually nothing happens. So we need to do something here. So in the process, which was very messy, this is what came out of, using this like a sort of leveled version of the original. And basically all we need to do here is go down with the brightness to 0.2 and then put that in here. And you're going to see still nothing, like there's something happening, but not really what we're wanting. What we want. And we're going to change this level to just be the second input. Okay, so we also need to go to level and change the clamp input to 0 and 1. Thing is, this was actually a project I did with the old version. I started with the old version, and now we have the new version of Touch, and now we have the option to change this here. So that is actually important for this to work. So if I just display that in the background, this already looks kind of cool, but there still needs to be some cleaning up to be done. So what we can do here is that we can add a threshold. And with the threshold, I'm going to go down with the threshold here to like 0.24. And now we can see we're basically getting rid of all that noise, right? So if I go down with this, you can see it adds more of that noise. And if I go up, it really just shows us these nice sort of chunks, these very clean shapes. Cool. So what we can also do here, I'm just going to add this in here and then again display this in the background so we can see what's happening. So we can already see there's some nice movement going on, but let's make this a bit more interesting by adding a classic slope and displace method here. So I'm going to add a displace and I'm going to add a blur from my comp2 here and also add a slope, which I'm going to pipe into the second input of the displace. So on my displace, I'm going to go down with the displace weight to 0.05 in both axes. On my blur, I'm going to change the blurring quite a lot to 3 and 24. And on my slope, I'm going to change the strength to 4 and sample steps both to 15. And now if I use this displacement and you put it on my feedback, you're going to see now it's much more dynamic. There's much more movement. So here it sort of seems static. It's already like that these chunks or these shapes are moving or based on or sort of being spawned wherever the person is, right? But using the displacement method here, we're adding some more fluidity, some more dynamic movement, which is actually sort of influenced by how the dancer is moving, which is great. Cool. So let me add some more interesting things. So basically what we have here, we're now at a point where we have we're basically the same point as here. We have a much more interesting look, but now we want to draw this onto the screen as well, which makes it even more interesting. So let's do that. So I'm going to add a feedback, another feedback. And again, I want to use my keyboard in here to be able to reset this loop. Okay. I'm also going to add a blur here. I'm just going to bypass this. And after my feedback, I'm going to add a level. And after from my blur, actually, I'm going to add a composite. Put that into here. And I'm going to put the level in here. Now you can see this doesn't actually work. So first off, we need to put this back into the feedback. We also need to change the operation again to difference. Kind of gives you a seizure. So it's already working, but it doesn't look that great. So what you can often do when you work with feedback loops and the operation difference, which is actually a great tool if you're working with feedback loops using operation difference, you often have this problem that it just sort of flashes. So sometimes it works that you just take the original input and put that into here. Now the problem is that we don't really have a difference between this one and this one, right? We're just piping in the same thing and trying to calculate the difference. So what we can do is we can create a third string and blur that. And then we have a difference between these two and this one. So now you can already see what's going on here. Let's make this a bit more extreme and change it to 24. And now you can already see these sort of bigger chunks. And we're basically now at this point where we're drawing what we're doing here on the screen. So we're not only seeing the dancer, but we're seeing the past of the dancer too, if you want. All right, so now it's never going to fade out. So again, we just need to go down with the opacity of our level, and I'm going to use the same value as we did in the beginning, 0.995. So now it's going to fade out over time. So it's not actually fading out because we still have the limit here. So if we bypass this, it also looks pretty cool. We're actually seeing this fade out effect, and it's going to be stronger if we go down with the opacity. Maybe not that much, like 0.8. Now you can sort of see there's a slight fading out effect, but I do like it a bit stronger, maybe 0.995 again, and then we can turn on the limit again. You can see this doesn't look that great right now. So to do that, again, we can, to change that, we can add another blur, and maybe just a slight blur, like 4. and it's gonna make things look a bit smoother. If you want to go really crazy, you could technically go back to the feedback, to the first one from here, and then add some other stuff in here. With that, you can really push this even further. But I do like the cleanness of this. So what we can also do after our limit, we can add an edge in here to just have the outlines of our output. And I do really like that look too. So we could also change it to like, I don't know, violet, pink, any color you like. You could also, for example, get rid of this edge and add another edge after the lookup. Turn comp over input on, and then you have both the chunks, for lack of a better word, and also the outlines. So you could also change these to, I don't know, blue or, I don't know, whatever you want. So there's a lot of room there, again, to play. And obviously you can mess around with the blurs here, you can mess around with the slope and the blur here. So the blur here before the slope is actually going to change the movement. And you can mess around with the threshold, you can mess around with this blur, make this stronger too. I wouldn't go too high, you can see, again, you have the sort of flashing effect. You could obviously also blur the input already, so it's not as, like, so the edges aren't as sharp that you're putting into here. But yeah, so again, I'm gonna just change this to 1. I'm gonna stand up and move in front of the camera. A kind of cool thing here, as you can see now, is that if you stand, it sort of looks different than if you're moving, which is kind of interesting, which you can't see that well here because the guy is just constantly moving. All right, so let me show you another thing here. So for now, we've really just been using 2 different kinds of silhouettes, one from a video, one from the Kinect. Let's now look at another video which is not a silhouette per se. It's really just a normal video, which is black and white. It doesn't technically have to be black and white, but I guess it works best. You can also just use a monochrome to make it black and white. All right, so again, let's add a fit here just to make sure that we're in the right resolution format and pixel format. So I'm gonna change this to 1920 by 1080, 32-bit float, and fit outside. And I'm going to use a method here to sort of extract just the motion of this video, because we don't want we sort of want still like a silhouette, because that works best for what we're doing here. So I'm going to use a cache here, and I'm going to use a cache select as well. So let me actually just quickly get rid of the background here. We don't need to see this the whole time. All right, so I'm going to use this in here. And basically what we're doing here with the cache select is that we can go back in time and select a frame that is X frames back. So if I just type in -5 here, or let's make it more extreme so you can see it better. So now we can sort of select a frame from the past up to, I don't know, what is it, 40 frames, 30 frames. We can go back into the past. I think -5 is a good value here. And what we can do now is, again, use a composite, pipe both of these in here, and just change this to difference. So now it's only going to show us the difference between both of these. So right now, in this case, it doesn't actually work that well. Actually, I think -3 is enough. And it works best if the camera is static and also if the background isn't moving, because it's just going to show us wherever there's movement now. So let's polish this up a bit by adding a level. And on this level, I'm gonna change the gamma to 3 and the contrast to 4. So it's a bit more clear. And I'm also gonna add a slight blurring, just the default blur. And I'm also gonna add a threshold here. All right. So I'm gonna pipe that into the third input of my switch and change index here to 2. Now on my transform, I want to add a black background again. So otherwise it's not going to work well. And whoops, if I turn on the BG here, the display, you can already see that this is sort of working. So what we want to do now in this case, which looks pretty interesting, is we want to composite this with the original. So I'm going to add a composite right before the lookup. And I'm going to use my original video here, the output. It's kind of hard to get, and just pipe that into here. I'm going to change the operation to over. And you're going to see this doesn't actually work because we have a black background here. So we can actually get rid of that by just adding a channel mix and changing alpha, the fourth one here, to 0. And now we have an alpha background, and we're putting our shapes onto the video, which looks pretty cool, I think. So we might want to go down with our threshold value here to 2. I'm also going to change the cue point here, like I already did that, to 0.4 in this case. And I'm also going to use my keyboard in on the pulse here, so I can quickly reset the video to a point where it makes sense for me to look at. So now you can see, once we went down here with the threshold, that now the motion is captured pretty nicely. We can even go down further. Technically, yeah, you can see here why I'm using a threshold, because without it doesn't actually work that well. So yeah, I think this is a really fun way to display the motion, sort of capture the motion, right? You could even try to use this one on here too. So let's put that into the limit. And yeah, it's a bit much. We could add a level here and just go down with the opacity. It's not as cool as the other one, but it's so interesting. Just wanted to show you that it's possible. All right. So as usual, just mess around with all of these things. Try different inputs. Let me know what works best for you. Let me know what other cool things you come up with, and always feel free to tag me on Instagram if you have any sort of things to show here. Obviously, you can mess around with the colors here, post effects, anything. Feel free. All right, so thanks a lot for watching this video, and I look forward to meeting you on the next one.